So I just got done with the buyer consultation, met with the family buying a house, and one of the biggest questions always is Steve, how much does it cost to buy a house? What are the expenses? Well, you're about to find out. Welcome, I am Steve Penate, realtor and host of the Steve Talks Real Estate Show, where we bring you value, content, and tips in all things real estate and housing related. So on this episode, I am gonna talk to you about how much it costs to buy a house. What are the expenses buyers incur during the buying process? Disclaimer, okay? These are rough numbers, okay? These are not numbers you should be basing your current situation from, but I'm doing this to give you a picture of what something could look like. First step I am gonna do is this, okay? Okay, the first thing is the down payment, okay? Number one. So how much is the down payment? Well, that's going to depend on what type of loan you qualify or choose to use. Now, there are types of loans that require 3%, 3.5%, 5%, 10%, 20%. So the example I am going to use, okay, is being applied towards young buyers, early buyers, first-time buyers, okay? So one of the most popular loans, okay, is the FHA loan, okay? And that requires 3.5% of the purchase price. Depending on what type of loan you qualify for or choose to use, okay, there is gonna be a percentage of the purchase price that is required, that is your down payment, okay? So for this example, let's use the example that the buyer is buying a house that costs $200,000, okay? $200,000 using an FHA loan, which is requiring 3.5% of the purchase price, okay? So the down payment is gonna be 3.5% of 200,000, and that equals $7,000, okay? So one of the primary expenses when buying a house is your down payment, okay? So in this case, we're using a popular one, okay? So that brings us down to $7,000 as the first buyer expense. Now the second expense, okay, or one of the primary secondary expenses are the closing costs, okay? Closing costs vary according to what type of loan and how much the loan is, okay? So once again, these are rough estimates, okay? So for example's sake here, okay, let's say that the closing cost for this purchase is gonna be $4,500, okay? Now, closing costs though, there's a twist to it, okay? Because closing costs are negotiable, okay? Your agent can negotiate so that the seller pays your closing costs. Closing costs can be negotiable, okay? Number three is the appraisal, okay? The appraisal is also an expense that is paid by the buyer, okay? So how much is the appraisal? Well, once again, that's going to vary on the size of the house, the purchase price, okay? But for example's sake here, okay, let's say the appraisal is costing us $500, okay? The appraisal is a buyer expense. The bank requires the buyers to have the house appraised, the house that they are buying. Banks want to make sure they are loaning out money to something that is actually worth it. Number four is the inspection on the house, okay? How much is the inspection? Well, that depends on the size of the house. For example's sake, let's just use the example that this inspection is gonna cost us $300. So these are the primary expenses buyers incur when buying a house, okay? So let's add them up. $12,360. Okay, so this is a rough example of the primary expenses there are to buy a house. There are programs that can help you out with the down payment, okay? But you have to qualify for the programs, okay? They're not for everybody, okay? Closing costs, once again, are negotiable. Move down to number 3, the appraisal is pretty much standard. The house has to be appraised. And number 4, the inspection, which it's very important you get the house inspected to make sure you're not moving into a house that's falling apart. Now, after going through this, there could be additional expenses, okay? Okay, what are some additional expenses? Well, HOA expenses, home warranty, okay? Repairs to the house. Now, even though these are the primary expenses, you as a buyer can encounter additional expenses. That's why it's super important you have great communication with your real estate agent in regards to what the contract looks like. And it's super important you are using a trusted lender, a trusted loan officer, mortgage banker that is walking you through the steps and is showing you what your numbers are actually looking like. Well, that wraps up episode number 29 of the Steve Talks Real Estate Show. I want to make this very clear. This example was just a ballpark figure just to show you what this process actually looks like. It's super important you have great communication with your real estate agent as he or she walks you through what your process looks like. And it's super important you have great communication with your lender, your mortgage banker, as to what these numbers look like in your situation. It could be that you qualify for a down payment assistance program that assists you with your down payment. Or it could be that your real estate agent is out there fighting for you and negotiating so that your closing costs are covered. Every situation is different. Keep sending in your questions and I will do my best to keep answering them. We'll see you next time.